Arguably my biggest success that was called Osino Resources. We sold that company only a couple of months ago to a Chinese entity for just under $400 million. Figuring out what your core competence is and then focusing on that is very important. Crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It's almost a mechanical process. We've got the technical know-how, we've got the money, but we know how to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We've done it many times before and we're looking to do it again. It has a lot of upside. It's not going to get worse. Can only get better. Effectively, right now, we're putting in place the infrastructure to do a big 30 to 40,000 meter drill program next year. We believe that the project easily has probably 30% size upside. I think we will put out a PEA in the second half of next year, but you will see me personally buying too. I am very bullish on this company.
All right, today we're having a discussion with Heye Daun, the CEO of Koryx Copper, a highly interesting copper explorer and mine developer with their Haib Copper Project in Namibia. Recently, mining legend Ross Beaty has invested in Koryx stock in a private placement for $1.1 per share. Now, at the time of recording, an investor at home like you yourself could buy the stock for less than $1 on the stock market today. That might just be a very interesting speculation opportunity, or at least that's what we'll try to figure out today. So Heye, it's great to have you on the channel. Welcome. Perhaps we can start off with a short and sweet overview from your side.
Yeah, Stan, thank you for having me on your show. I'm as you say, the president and CEO of Koryx Copper, but I am a Namibian citizen and a mining deal maker. I've done this for quite a long time. I've had some good success in the past. I've built some companies and sold some companies, and we're basically looking to do it again over here. And that's the background. That's the background of me. So Koryx is a Canadian-listed junior copper development company with some very interesting assets. The cornerstone asset is the Haib Copper Project in Namibia. And in addition to that, we have some earlier stage exploration licenses in Zambia. The Haib Copper Project is very interesting because it's quite large. It's certainly globally significant. It has been overlooked. It has been in the wrong hands for a long time. And as a result, it hasn't been advanced or brought forward. Also, it just hasn't had the attention, the technical attention and the financial backing that it needed in order to turn it into something, and that's what we're looking to do with it.
All right, thank you for that first overview, Heye. I really appreciate that. Perhaps we can dive into the management team behind it. You already highlighted you have done this rodeo before. You've made some couple successful exits in the past. Can you outline what it was all about and who of your team you've done that with in the past?
Sure. You know what I've learned? I've learned many things. I'm 52 now, but sticking to your knitting or figuring out what your core competence is and then focusing on that is very important. And our core competence is identifying, acquiring, advancing, de-risking, financing, and then selling mining projects. And obviously through that acquiring, through that process that I mentioned, that's the classic value curve. That de-risking creates value. And we've done that. I've done that successfully 3 times. First, in 2010, we acquired a gold project in Namibia where we raised about $80 million. We took it through a couple of studies, ended up selling it to B2Gold in 2012. They built a very successful gold mine, which is still in production today. It's $1 billion company. We sold it for 200. So that was the first one. Second one, I did in Ecuador, where I got to know Ross Beaty, which was a company called Lumina Gold, where it was a merger of some other assets, but a very similar concept. And then the third one was actually arguably my biggest success that was called Osino Resources. We sold that company only a couple of months ago to a Chinese entity for just under $400 million. And we started that company from nothing. Basically, it was in Namibia, built it from scratch, made a discovery, raised $100 million in a couple of financings, drilled 250,000 meters of drilling, got a resource, technical studies, sold it to the Chinese, and it's getting built now. So that's why, when I say our core competence, we know what we're doing, etc. That's really what counts. And we're looking to do exactly that again with Koryx. What's very nice about Koryx, why I like this opportunity so much, is that there's no exploration risk. Exploration risk is a difficult one because it's hard to predict. This one is all about execution, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It's almost a mechanical process. We've got the technical know-how, we've got the money. It takes time, but we know how to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We've done it many times before, and we're looking to do it again. And that's why, if you can get rid of the exploration risk, and then you're left with management risk, financing risk, and market risk. 2 of those we can deal with. Market risk we can't, but market risk we deal with in another way, which is ultimately the price setter. The ultimate price setter is going to be the M&A takeout. And on every deal that we've done, it has always ended with an M&A takeout. So we do speak with a bit of authority on that plan.
Well, thank you for outlining that plan. It definitely creates a great picture. Perhaps we can dive actually into some of those success stories a bit deeper. Your most recent one, Osino Resources. I love how you highlighted that you've raised roughly 100 million capital and you've sold it for almost 400. That outlines what kind of return actually was made for an investor as well, how much value was added, right?
Yes, of course, the early investors made the most. I mean, Ross Beaty made a 10-bagger. He invested, I'm not going to say what he invested, but he invested a single-digit million and he made double-digit millions out of it. So it was a very successful deal for him. The highest money came in at $1.10. The last money came in at about 85 cents. We sold the company for $1.90. So it wasn't a crazy deal, but what's very important, everybody made money and everybody looks good. There were no losers. So looking after people is key. So many of these junior companies are lifestyle companies, and all they do is look after the promoters or the founders with seed stock, and that's not us. I can tell you, like, one of our key selling points is that we have a very low BS factor. I don't want to say the word. We've got a low bullshit factor. Number one. Number two, we are very real. Real projects, real people. Yes, we promote. It's part of the junior game. But generally speaking, we do what we promise we will do. And we are very good at executing. And you know, it's a very simple formula. But unfortunately, in the junior space, there are so many companies that are overly promotional, don't follow exactly these routes.
Great, Heye. Thank you for that overview. Perhaps now we can dive into the Haib Copper Project, your flagship project. I believe there is a resource in place. There is also a PEA in place, if I'm correct. Perhaps you can outline what are we looking at value-wise today?
Yeah, no problem. So the Haib Copper Project is a large-scale, tier 2, open-pit, simple copper porphyry. It's quite comparable to South American, like Escondida, whatever, those kind of deposits in the Andes. It's very different to the Zambian copper belt where you have sedimentary copper. Completely different. Sedimentary copper is high grade. It's like Kamoa, Friedland. This is different. This is low grade, but large disseminated porphyry. So that's what we have. The project has an excellent pedigree. It's been around for over 100 years. Rio Tinto drilled it intensively in the 1970s. They then sold it to Teck, and Teck sold it to a junior company that really just sat on it, did very little work. The reason the project was handed on like that from owner to owner is that it's relatively low grade. It's currently 0.35% copper. But with copper prices recently having moved up, when I say recently, last couple of years, and also there being such a positive supply and demand outlook for the future, there's of course huge demand for predictable and problem-free, hassle-free projects. And that's why this project all of a sudden got attention again. So luckily, as I said in the beginning, there's no exploration risk. It already is quite large. It's about 1 billion tons of material for around 2.5 million tons of contained copper. Or for the people who work in pounds, it's about 5 to 6 billion pounds of contained copper. So the production rate probably will end up being between 60 and 100,000 tons of copper per year, which makes it a tier 2 project. It's not tier 1. It's not Escondida. It's not Cobra Panama. It's not those. But it's a high quality tier 2 one, which will be of interest to Western groups or Chinese groups once we've done the de-risking and right-sizing and optimizing. So what we're doing at the moment is we're taking that project. It exists. It's known. It has a lot of upside. It's not going to get worse. It can only get better. And we're making it get better through drilling, technical studies, proving process flow sheets, de-risking, water, power, utilities, permitting, getting it ready for construction. And I think then is the time to bring in a bigger partner, because it's quite a big project. We're talking probably, I mean, this is non-43 101, so I have to be careful with these numbers, obviously speculative, but it's going to be a $1 billion plus project, $1.5 billion or so, which is big for a junior, but small for a large open pit copper project of this nature. And clearly with those kind of numbers, this project is too big for a junior. So, but juniors are very well placed to do the de-risking, advancement, right sizing, optimizing. That's our core competence. So we're going to do that.
Yeah, that sounds great as the grander strategy, and thank you for that overview. Makes complete sense. Perhaps what we can also talk about very quickly to highlight, if you look at those 5 million pounds of copper in the ground, that's already tens of billions in potential in situ material. Of course, that first needs to be mined. There's costs associated with that, but tens of billions of dollars just to show the scale to a viewer at home. And perhaps we can talk about this slide here, slide 10. Thank you, Lars, for putting it up. We see some drill results that are very interesting in some higher grade zones and some lower grade zones. Perhaps you can take us through the exploration that's currently ongoing. And is there a potential for a higher grade starter pit somewhere on this project to de-risk the initial startup of the mine?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for bringing this up. It's the most important slide. And thank you also for pointing out the high grades, which I created the slide and it's in a very small font, so most people don't even see it. I'm going to make it red and put a red square around it and a circle in the next iteration. So let me start. The current resource, basically all the purple stuff that you're looking at there, the purple haze, the outline, the background, that is the billion tons that I mentioned earlier at 0.35% copper. That's copper only, not copper equivalent. So we haven't brought in any byproducts. Now, if you look at comparable projects in the South American Andes that are viable, broad rule of thumb, if we can get to 0.45% copper equivalent, I think then we're in business. Then we've got a real project. How are we going to get there? We've got 4 arrows of how we're going to increase the grade. Number 1 is to bring in the byproducts. To do that, we have to demonstrate a processing route that can actually extract the byproducts, the byproducts being gold and moly. There is more gold and moly there. We don't know exactly how much. Some areas were assayed for gold and moly, but most areas were never assayed by the historical operators because they didn't have the money. So I think byproducts only could get us another 0.05. So that would get us to 0.04. Sorry, 0.4. From 0.35 to 0.4. Number 1, byproducts. Number 2, chasing the high grades. You point out the high grade zones, which you can see in these purple discs. That's the most recent drilling that was done earlier this year. And we will obviously follow that up. And you can see that those average grades over significant widths are quite a lot higher, like 0.5, 0.6. We don't know how much that will gain, but certainly I think we can improve the grade somewhat by just chasing those structurally controlled higher grades. So that's the second arrow. The third arrow is to do infill drilling. And what infill drilling allows you to do is to constrain the resource more. Think about it like a sausage. If you squeeze a sausage, you squeeze what's in the sausage into a smaller volume, it kind of gets, I'm sort of making up this metaphor, it's not ideal. But when you constrain it more, you're not creating more metal, but you're putting the metal into a smaller volume, which effectively means the grade improves. And that's a very common phenomenon with gold, with any metal project. So when you do infill drilling, generally the more dense you drill it, the higher the grade goes. So I do think with infill drilling, we are going to be able to constrain more, get the grade up. And then lastly, with cut-off grade optimization, which means mining the good stuff first, putting the bad stuff on stockpile, we should get it further. So I think we are quite confident that we can get the grade into that 0.45% region. But in order to do so, we have to do a lot of drilling. And actually, we're very focused on this at the moment. We've been quite bad at putting out press releases. There will be one in the next few weeks that will outline a project update. But effectively, right now, we're putting in place the infrastructure to do a big 30 to 40,000 meter drill program next year. We're buying rigs. We've got 2 rigs drilling at the moment. Got another 2 on the way. We're buying another 2. So we're going to be drilling with 6 rigs next year in order to do that drilling. And that drilling will take us quite a long time. It will take us 6 to 9 months. But with that drilling, I believe that we are going to, we will achieve those 4 arrows that I mentioned, and that's going to improve the grade. So that's the quality, improving the grade. And then the quantity is, if you again look at that purple outline, and you look at that area, for example, above the legend, you can see that in many areas the project has not been drilled very deep, and a lot of these holes actually end in mineralization. So just by drilling deep and by doing step outs, we believe that the project easily has probably 30% size upside, which will then increase your life of mine, which is important for acquirers, because projects like these, where you spend $1 billion, billion and a half, you want to have 20 years plus mining life. That's what we're going for. Sorry, that was a long and complicated answer to a simple question.
A very comprehensive answer. That makes complete sense. And I think those 4 arrows makes complete sense as well. That drilling campaign that's about to start next year, that you're doing the infrastructure and preparations for, when should investors expect the first catalyst from that, assays, drill results, those type of news reports?
Yeah, so I'm going to make a joke and be serious. My joke is, do you know that old saying, good results come by private jet and bad results come by dog sled? It's what the Canadians often say. But I'm making the joke because, of course, investors often misinterpret drill results because sometimes you have good ones, sometimes you have bad ones. So we just want to bulk up and have enough results. And you will see that we did the same thing with Osino. When we announce results, generally we announce them in bulk. We never announce every single hole individually. We started drilling a couple of weeks ago. So I would imagine that sometime in January we will start putting out results, and then thereafter, probably once a month or so, we should have drill results. So that's important. Those will be more of the same, and more of the same is good. Some high grade, some low grade, some expansion. Secondly, in terms of news, of course, progress with metallurgical test work. We're doing a whole range of metallurgical test work in order to demonstrate the various processing routes that we have as an option. All of that will ultimately culminate in a technical study, either a PEA or straight PFS. We're not sure yet. I think we will put out a PEA in the second half of next year. And unfortunately, we have to wait that long because it takes time to get all that drilling in. And we only want to put out a PEA or a new technical report if there's a meaningful improvement in the resource model. That's why I think that will only be in the second half or so. And then before that, of course, the commencement of permitting. It has already started. But that's a process. ESIAs, mining licenses, all these various permits. We're going public on the Namibian Stock Exchange. That's another news flow, probably around March. There's a lot of investor interest in Namibia. Namibia has got quite a sophisticated capital market, and people have seen what we did with Osino. So we have a lot of fans that want to invest, and that's why we're doing that Namibian listing. And so I think we'll generate a whole range of newsworthy events which we will publicize.
Yeah, great, Heye. Thank you for that comprehensive overview there as well. Perhaps next we can talk about financing. I believe you've recently completed a financing for 18 million Canadian dollars at $1.1. That was the one I talked about where Ross Beaty participated as well. I believe even without a warrant, which is quite impressive in this market. Perhaps you can outline the backing of that and what it allows you to do, and where that places us for the next financing requirement.
We have roughly $20 million in the bank now. We raised 18 recently, as you say, and we raised another 2 in May. So that gives us a 20. We'll probably end up spending about 15 next year, mostly on drilling, plus a range of technical studies and infrastructure. So I do think that towards the end of next year or so, there could be another financing, but not anytime soon. Of course, our valuation is still quite low, and we would want that to be increased and improved before we finance again. So that's the generic answer. Specifically, you asked about the style of financing and no warrant, etc. So what I must remind you is, you know that we just sold that company Osino. And with that, we have a lot of friends and family, my brother, my sister, myself personally. Lots of people did well and made a lot of money. And they have cash lying around. So basically, it's those people that came into this financing. Every one of them said, when we asked them, would you like to come in? Most of them said, give us as much as you can. And most of them got far less than they asked for. And that's why we were able to do it. We did it. It was Beaver Creek in September. The share price ran to $1.10, and we realized it's a good time. Copper was hot. At the moment, copper's going down a bit. That's the market. So I think I'm happy that we did it at that time. Now you can see the share price is trading down a bit. So, for retail investors, it would have been better in any case to buy in the market, because that financing was a private placement, which means it's 4-month hold, Canadian 4-month hold. So as a retail investor, it's much better to buy in the market. And unfortunately, we are in a blackout at the moment for another 2 weeks because of our audited financials, which are about to come out. But you will see me personally buying too. I am very bullish on this company, and I put in a big number into that last financing. In fact, when I say I have an associated family office, as you can imagine, and they invested significantly. And I will continue to buy in the market, and you will see that. So I think I'm very bullish on the company. The valuation is good, and I think that demonstrates commitment and alignment with shareholders.
Yes, definitely. Perhaps we can also talk about Ross Beaty behind the scenes, of course, a big name within the mining space. Definitely great to have him just as a vote of confidence. But does he also help you guys behind the scenes? Does he have a vision for the company, or is he just a passive investor in this one?
Ross loves supporting young entrepreneurs. And when he met me, he took a liking to me, which is my luck. But I think he also liked my style. My style is what you see is what you get, and no bullshit and reality. And I think he liked that. So he supported me, and I think that's what motivates him. He's very helpful. If we need him to open doors or to bring in other investors or to act as a multiplier, he does that. But I value the relationship with Ross, and that's why we don't take it lightly, and we don't often ask him for help. But when we do, he's there. But it's not just Ross. There's a range of other institutional investors that came in that have been with us before, like Resource Capital Funds out of Denver, very strong. And you know what's good about those investors is that they stick with you through thick and thin, from the beginning to the end. They understand the game. They know that the end here is going to be an M&A takeout, and they are very patient. In Osino's case, it took 7 years. I think in this case, obviously I can't predict, but I think it's going to happen a lot quicker because exploration has been done. We've got about 2 years of drilling, studies, permitting ahead of us, 2 to 3 years, and I think in that third year I could foresee that there will be it's likely that M&A, etc., will be on the table then. Even though I shouldn't really talk about it because we're not focused on M&A. We're focused on building a credible standalone plan. What sells is quality. And quality comes through technical credibility. So we're approaching this like a major mining company. We're doing all the test work and all the drilling and everything to the highest degree of detail, to the highest level of quality we can, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, that sounds like a great strategy to have, and I couldn't agree more with you there. Quality sells 100%. Perhaps we can also talk about your other assets. You referenced them way at the start of this interview, but great to also include in this overview. What other assets does Koryx Copper have?
So we inherited two or three interesting early stage licenses in Zambia. Those licenses are very well located, so they are very prospective, but they are early stage. They are exploration licenses. And as you know, exploration takes a long time. So we are just concluding our review of those licenses and some other opportunities that have been offered to us in Zambia. And the plan is to consolidate those, try and grow our footprint in Zambia, do a bit of work so that we can add value to these licenses, and then reevaluate our options. Our focus will always be Haib. The Haib Copper Project is where the value lies. And that's why with Zambia, we are committed to it. We want to create value there for our shareholders, but it's always going to be secondary. It's never going to be a primary asset. And we've got a lot of options. We could spin it out. We could get together with others. But before we do that, we need to bulk up the portfolio a bit and make it a bit better. And then we can evaluate that. But it's, as I say, it's going to be 10 to 20% of our expenditure or effort, and 80 to 90% will be on Haib.
Thank you so much, Heye, for your time. Really appreciate it. For a viewer at home, perhaps you can also include how they can be in touch with the company to reach out and ask their questions.
We are not an arrogant company, and I appreciate being contacted directly, personally, by retail investors or any investor for that matter. I try to respond quickly. The best way to reach me is to send an email to our investor relations manager. She's based in Vancouver, Julia Becker, jbecker@KRYXCopper.com, and she will forward it to me. Typically, I will then respond by email. I'm in contact and in communication with a range of retail investors, and I appreciate retail very, very much. Institutions are important, but retail is very important too, so I'd love to be in touch with people who are interested in the company.